Hi everybody. So certainly didn't think I was gonna make this video, but here it is. This is basically how my first year of trying to conceive went. So I did a lot of things. If you watched my video of all the things I did to prepare to try to conceive, I continued to do pretty much most of them, or most of everything on that list of 50 things. But some things I didn't have to continue to do. I didn't have to continue to go to chiropractor. Stopped going to physio, but I did continue to go to acupuncture for the first few months of trying to conceive. I continued to not wear nail polish. I continued to not use household cleaners and stuff that were full of crazy chemicals and perfumes. I continued to use safer beauty products and continued to eat organic where I could and have a better diet. Although around mid, in that first year of trying to conceive, around the midpoint and like later, my diet definitely got worse. I started eating dairy more often. I also started to eat gluten again. It's just easier, and high salt things, and I was indulging in desserts a lot more. But I found that you can be super strict a lot and follow all the things and do all the things that you're supposed to do, but I also had to be happy and live, which meant I wanted to eat dessert sometimes if I was celebrating, and I wanted to get pizza with my friends, and I was also on pizza quests with some people in the city, and so we would do different pizza quests and try eating out at all these other places. So I would go along on those as well, and I loved it, and we still do it. So I eat pizza then, and I eat whatever I want on those because that doesn't happen very often. So I was allowing myself to do those because, again, life goes on. Not a lot of people even knew I was trying to conceive, except for like close friends. And I continued to do castor oil packs in the follicular phase. I started to follow more traditional Chinese medicine things that I had read. So that involved keeping my feet warm in the luteal phase. Again, the luteal phase is the time between when you ovulate and when you start your period again. That time frame there is when implantation happens. So warm feet, warm uterus. Cold feet, cold uterus. And zygotes like to embed and implant in a uterus that is nice and warm and cozy. In the summer, it would be, there has to be so many people who do this. In the summer, it would be really hot, so all my windows would be down, and my heat would be on feet only and on full blast hot in the in my luteal phase. So I was getting nice and cool breeze when I was driving, but my feet were nice and toasty. If I had the air conditioner on, I made sure that the air conditioner was not pointed at my feet if I was in the luteal phase, because you can't have ice cold feet when you're hoping that there's a baby implanting in your uterus. That's just crazy talk. And I, through researching and doing everything I could, you read the old wives' tales. So yes, I would eat pineapple in the luteal phase because of the bromelain. Also, around 3 months in trying to conceive, I went to my doctor and asked her to refer me to a reproductive endocrinologist, or gynecologist, or whoever. It ended up being a reproductive endocrinologist because what do they say? They say if it takes you 1 year of trying to get pregnant and it doesn't work, you got to see somebody because there could be something wrong. I was in my early to mid 30s, so I knew that if it takes a year, like I don't have a lot of time left. It'd be a different story if I was in my early 20s and it took a year to try to conceive and didn't work. Okay, well, we got a bunch more time and it's totally cool. But so what I did 3 months into trying to conceive was I went to my doctor and I said, I lied and said, it's been a year. And I lied because here in Nova Scotia, and maybe the rest of Canada, I'm not sure, but if you ask to see a specialist, it takes months and months and months to see that specialist, unless there's an emergency. So I knew that saying I need to see somebody because I've been trying for a year and it's not working, I knew doing that would then get the ball rolling for me to see a specialist, and it worked because I ended up seeing that specialist exactly 1 year into the whole journey. So by the time I actually saw that specialist, when you're supposed to see somebody, if it's been taking you a year, it had been a year. So it was perfect. So if I had have waited until I was a year into this and still no baby, and then went to my doctor and said, hey, it's been a year, I'm 34 now and it's not working, I would have seen someone 2 years into it, and that would have lost me so much time. And I also tried to do de-stressing things. So I would take Epsom salt baths. I started to get full body massages every 2 weeks. And it sounds expensive, but it isn't, because you might have this in your city too, but in my city there's a massage school and the students need people to practice on. So it's dirt cheap. Look it up. See if the massage school in your city does the same thing. It's great. So I did that, and it helps a lot with relaxing and of course with sore muscles too. So I felt great every 2 weeks. Also, in that first year of trying to conceive, a lot of bad things happened in my, like stressful things happened in my life, between people dying or people getting really bad news and having to deal with that. So that really was hard. And my fiance being off work because he broke his wrist, and adjusting to that. I also started to listen to more trying to conceive podcasts. That's one thing I avoided when I was preparing to try to conceive, because some of it was negative stuff, and a lot of times they said the infertility word. I did not want to associate that word with me, because I didn't want to allow that negative energy into my world, into my universe. So I avoided that. But in the first year of trying to conceive, like 6 months in, 7 months in, 8 months in, I was like, okay, I'm going to start to listen to some trying to conceive infertility podcasts, just to see what other people go through, to give myself hope, or to give myself more areas to research so that I could have better chances again. And I would also take Dollarama tests, starting at 8 DPO, 9 DPO, 10 DPO, and I usually start my period on day 10 or 11 days past ovulation. So Dollarama tests were my best friend. They're $1.25, and they're basically the same tests that the doctor's offices use. They work fine, and they're pretty sensitive. Not as sensitive as first response, of course, or early results ones, which I did, and I did take those too. Like if I took a dollar store test, 8 and 9 DPO, and there was a evaporation line or maybe an indent line, I wasn't quite sure, then, and if my temps also too weren't going down yet, then I would buy a first response. And of course I just kept getting negatives. And yeah, negatives are hard, and you get so excited during the 2 week wait, and you get hopeful, and you're taking tests, and you're looking at your temps, and they're going up, or you can't really tell what your charts are doing, and then you get negatives, and you're like, okay, well maybe it's still too early, and then you try to calculate when implantation happened. Implantation can happen between 6 and 12 days past ovulation, usually on day 9 past ovulation, but if I start my period on day 10 DPO, it might be implanting right at the same time that my progesterone is dropping off to start my period, and then so constant thoughts like that. So some months getting a negative, and a negative like on the day of your period, and having your period start. Yeah, that was hard. But I think a lot of times I was in good spirits about it. Sure, I was sad for a few hours and mad, but I'd be like, okay, this is a fresh new cycle, and there's a good chance that this could be the month that we get pregnant. But then other months, of course, it was a lot harder because some months, like, I did everything. Like, I did castor oil packs, and I kept my feet warm the whole time, and I was de-stressed, and things were going good, and I had a good diet, and another negative, and I would be really sad. I didn't really, yeah, I did cry. Yeah, I guess I did a lot of times, but I wouldn't really cry when I seen a negative test. Like, it wasn't anything like that. I wasn't crying in the bathroom, but it was more like out shopping, and you know, I walked past baby stuff, and then I'd just cry in my car before I went home, you know, stuff like that. Well, every cycle, you're hopeful, and then you look ahead 9 months down the road and think, okay, well, that's okay. If I get pregnant right now, then I'll be super big in like August, so the heat, that would suck, and I'd be uncomfortable, but then I'd have a summer baby, and that's really cool. But then another month would come, and you'd be like, okay, so I would end up giving birth in like February or January, like then I think of when they were a kid, and like having a birthday party in the middle of winter, like it wouldn't be that much fun. And so, and then I'd be thinking, okay, well, do I want to be 8 and 9 months pregnant in the middle of winter with the chance of slipping and falling? But I'd be like, well, sure, yeah. Anyway, you think of those things the whole way through, every cycle, every time you start your period, you're sad, but then you're hopeful, and then then you think about the future, and you get hopeful again all through your cycle, and then you're super excited and thinking this could be it, and then everything crashes because you got your period again, and you're 34 and you're 35, and it's still just not quite working. I would go to my naturopath still. I would see her every month or every couple months, and check in to make sure that things are still going good, and she'd give me new things to do. And I had told her that, you know, my luteal phase was back to 10 days, and I wasn't sure how my progesterone levels were. So I had hormone testing, and my progesterone seemed fine. All my hormones seemed fine. So, but I was like, online, I'm seeing all these women say that Vitex did it for them. I asked my naturopath if she can get me on Vitex, because I was like, I have a feeling that Vitex is what I need. So she said, okay, well, I mean, it's not going to hurt, and it will help extend your luteal phase, and you know, I can try it for a few months and see how that goes. So I started Vitex, and that was in August last summer. So, and then 7, 8 DPO, 9 DPO, I was taking dollar store tests as I normally would. And then finally on 10 DPO, I took a dollar store test in the afternoon, and I could have sworn I saw a line. But I've seen that shit before. I've seen evaporation lines before. I know what an indent line looks like. But I could see a little bit of a line, but it was so faint. But I could have sworn the line was pink, and it wasn't gray. So it wasn't an evaporation line. And that was on a Friday. So then I got a first response test, of course, like I normally would if I was questioning it. And I went home and I took that test at 9 p.m. When my fiance was gone to poker. So I was home alone, and I took that test, and instantly all my dreams had come true because it was positive, and it was such a crazy feeling. I felt everything all at once, and it was so amazing. I felt everything all at once. So here's a video of basically right after I found out.
I'm pregnant. That doesn't make any. Of course it makes sense. We've been trying. Yes, it makes sense. It makes sense. I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant. That doesn't make any or yes it does. It makes fucking sense. It's crazy that I'm saying it out loud is what I mean.
No one at work knew. Of course not. You can't tell anybody, but it's so crazy. Like as soon as I went back to work, I was like, I'm pregnant. And nobody at work knows that I am. And it was like a secret. It was crazy. Yeah, and then I remember morning sickness was starting to be a thing. I never threw up, but I did feel super nauseous, and I hated chicken and I hated vegetables, and it got to the point where like all I could really eat was oatmeal. But I was still taking prenatals every day because my diet sucked because I couldn't. Everything was so gross. I could smell everything all the time. So I wanted to tell a lot more people because I was symptomatic, like I wanted. And I remember it was about 2 months in, and and work, like just more stuff was happening at work. So my boss and another man at work had me come into my boss's office because we were just talking about some project that we were on, and then my boss said, okay, well, since this is ramping up and more stuff is coming on board, then we're gonna need you to do some more overtime. I was already working 8 hours a day, and around that time, around 2 months in, 8 hours was, and the exhaustion. Oh my God, I was so tired because I quit coffee at the same time as soon as I found out I was pregnant. And then that mixed in with like normal early pregnancy fatigue. Doing an 8-hour day was exhausting, and I felt sick all day. And some days near the end of the day, I was starting to feel so sick, like super waves of nausea. I wouldn't get morning sickness. I know I said that earlier. I didn't get morning sickness. It happened later in the day, and then it would happen all night. Oh my God, and the heartburn. Forget about that. Thinking back on it now, I'm so thankful I had all those symptoms. It's so cool to talk about that I had all those symptoms because there was a baby in there. So anyway, so yeah, 2 months, my boss and another man called me into the office. And so I was like, shit, I can't. And so I said, I was like, I would love to, but I really can't right now. And then my boss sort of gave me a look like, what? That's weird. Why not? And then I was like, so I've been really exhausted lately, and I have morning sickness, and one of like the man who wasn't my boss started to laugh because he knew instantly what it was. And then my boss clued in, and I was like, so I really can't do more than 8 hours a day right now. And I said, I'm 2 months. I never said the P word. I said, I'm 2 months. And then my boss was like, okay, that makes sense. Well, congratulations. And okay, so you don't have to. So that was good. And I actually felt good knowing that 2 people in the office knew. A few weeks after that, Thanksgiving, and then we told my fiance's family, part of the family, just this little the ones that we see the most, and that was awesome, and that was over Thanksgiving. But also around that time, I started having spotting. So of course Googling, and I knew that was really common. And it's one of those things where you Google that symptom and Google how many weeks you are, and there's a bunch of stories saying that it's no big deal, happened to me and I was fine, pregnancy was healthy, and then there's a bunch of stories saying that's not good, this happened to me, and then this bad thing happened. So I was like, I don't know what's going on. And then I went to also my doctor. My first ultrasound ever was like scheduled by my doctor was going to be the day I went into the 2nd trimester, which is ridiculous because I was terrified, and it was my first one, and I had one tube that was partially blocked. I didn't know where it was implanting. I needed an ultrasound ASAP, like for my own peace of mind, but my doctor was like, no, you're good. You get your first one on this date in the future, and it ended up being, super late. But anyway, so I was like, okay, I'll pay for it myself. So I ended up going to like a Mommy and Me ultrasound place where they do 3D imaging, just so I can have an ultrasound just to make sure that it's it's growing in the right spot. Make sure that, and it wasn't an entertainment ultrasound. It wasn't a medical one, so they weren't going to do measurements and all that stuff. But I just wanted to see it. I just wanted to see the little tiny blip on the screen, and I just wanted to see the gestational sac and the yolk sac. I wanted to be sure that it was there. So I went to that appointment, and we could see the yolk sac, we could see the gestational sac, and couldn't really see the baby though. At that point, it was so early on, and so that's what she said. And happened a lot, like where sometimes the baby was just like further back, so sort of hidden. So yeah, it made sense that we couldn't really see the embryo in that ultrasound. And then the spotting was happening too at that same time. So it was like, okay, there's something, I'm getting really worried. So I ended up going to emergency because that was the only way I was able to get a medical ultrasound. So I went and they did the ultrasound. Finally, I was able to have a medical ultrasound, and they couldn't see anything either. And that was in the nighttime, like 10 p.m. on a work night. And so they said, come back in the morning and we will do another ultrasound. And I think they took my HCG again as well, and the numbers were a bit lower. And at that time, your numbers should be getting higher and higher and higher. And then the next morning, we went back to the hospital and had the vaginal ultrasound. And and then I waited on that bed in there. I remember I was wearing black sweatpants and a black sweater. I was really comfy and waiting, and me and my fiance knew we knew it wasn't good. And at that point I was 7 weeks. And the doctor came in the room and said there was no heartbeat. Around that time there should have been. And your HCG levels had gone down even more. And they could see it's crazy. They could see the embryo on the ultrasound, but it wasn't as big as 7 weeks. And it's crazy because I got a few different answers from a few different doctors as to how big the embryo was. But I believe it was around 6 weeks the embryo was, or 5.5 weeks. So they determined that's when it stopped growing, was around 5.5 or 6 weeks. And it was on a Friday, I think, Friday morning when they told me that, or maybe even Thursday morning. And they said, okay, well, it's not growing anymore. It died, and your HCGs are coming down, and you're having miscarriage. So they said, now we're going to refer you to the early pregnancy complications clinic, and you're going to see them on Monday. So that was, I had to go all weekend knowing that I was miscarrying, and there was something inside of me that was once alive but wasn't anymore. And that weekend I actually went on a food quest with some friends. Only one friend knew what was going on, and he was there with me. But I was with some other friends, and of course they didn't know. Nobody knew what was going on. Of course I told my mom, my grandmother, my fiance, and some of his family knew, and my best friend knew. But anyway, so going on that food quest, and we did Asian food. It was awesome. We had bubble tea, and that was on a Sunday. And what I was going through outside of that was it sucked. So then Monday came, and then I went to the early pregnancy complications clinic, and there was lots of different ways that I could go about it. I didn't want to do surgery because that could cause scarring, and so I ended up taking the misoprostol, the pill that you take the pill vaginally, and then it makes your uterus contract a bunch and expel it, because it wasn't the embryo was tiny, so that wouldn't have been a big deal. The embryo was only as big as like my pinky nail. Yeah, even a little bit smaller than my actual pinky nail. That's how big it was. So it was fine to be able to do that at home, and a lot of people choose to do it that way at home. Yeah, on that Monday I took the misoprostol, and it happened. I'm not going to go into details. The pill worked, and that was insane experience. That was something else. And then it was over. And then I wasn't pregnant anymore. It was crazy. And then the next day I took off as well, so I could just be, you know. But I remember, sure, it was horrible, but I knew so much about it, and I knew, well, I didn't know how it happened. We still don't know why I miscarried. There's so many different things it could have been. But I knew a lot about how these things happen and what it could have been. And so yes, it was horrible and it was really sad. But at the same time, I was like, okay, I'm so grateful it happened, but let's get this behind us and get healthy again so I can get pregnant again. And I think a really important part of going through all that was I had to feel everything. I had to process everything because I knew that pretending everything was okay and doing all that stuff wasn't good, it wasn't healthy, and it was only going to prolong the emotional anguish. And actually, the day that I took that drug and had the miscarriage, that day was October 15th. And October 15th is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Day, which I had no idea. So right after that, I stopped following trying to conceive stuff and pregnancy things on Instagram and Facebook. I still stayed in the groups because it helped a lot, but I ended up joining another group which was for people experiencing loss, and that helped a lot. That was a really great support group. And of course then the sadness would come a lot more over the coming months too. But I think I did handle it pretty good considering how other people might handle it. So that was in the fall, and going back to work, nobody knew, of course, because, well, except for my boss and for the other man who knew originally. So yeah, it sucked going back to work knowing what you just went through a couple days ago, and just going back to normal, like everything's fine. And but it helped a lot. It helped a lot. It was really helpful to be able to focus on work and go back to normal routine. There was a couple days there though where when I got off work and I'd be like, oh God, I'm gonna cry, and there's no way I'm gonna stop it. I ran to my car one day because I was gonna explode cry because it was just too much. You know, just some days are just hard. So, and I bawled my face off in my car in my work parking lot because it was still fresh, and it was still, the grieving process it takes a while. Like it's just crazy how grief affects you. Like I was in shock for a few days, and then I was like accepting it, and then I was super sad, and anyway, really hard times. And then so that's near the end of the first year trying to conceive. And then just after my birthday in November, I got another positive pregnancy test for maybe 2 days, and then it faded back to negative again. So that was a chemical pregnancy. And that was really unfortunate. So I was like, okay, well, the joy of seeing a positive the second time around, yes, it was really exciting, but I was so scared. And then really sad when it started to get negative again, and the line faded, and then my period started. So I was like, okay, well, I'm glad that I have this appointment with this reproductive endocrinologist next week. Actually, it was like about a month after that. I had finally was able to see that reproductive endocrinologist. So I ended up seeing her shortly after 1 year trying to conceive. So I will talk about that in my next video. But so this was the video all on my first year of trying to conceive, and all the things that I did, and the things that happened, and the 2 losses that happened in the first year. And I'm glad that I get to talk about this. And I knew I would eventually, but it's not something that I want to tell everybody, especially shortly after. And it's not something I want to talk about all the time. I'll talk about it with my fiance and like my best friend and my mom, and some other people do know, and I'll tell them stuff if they want to know. But yeah, just sometimes it's just too much to be able to just tell the world. But enough time has passed now that that it's okay for me to talk about the loss because it's so common. And so I had a loss when I was 34, and then one when I was just turned 35. And if you are going through that or have went through it and you're still in your trying to conceive journey, you know this, but you're not alone. There's so many people out there like us. It's sad. It's crazy. But I still have faith, and faith that I'm gonna be a mother someday, and I'm still going strong. I can still do it. It's still gonna happen someday. So watch my next video, because I'm gonna talk about what happened when I finally did see that reproductive endocrinologist, and what happened with the testing she did, and what is next in this journey.